As a young firefighter, one thing you will quickly learn is that what you see isn't always what you get. This video comes from FB1 Response Videos, and if you haven't checked out some of his work, definitely go see his channel. He truly is one of the best out there, capturing some of the best fire footage on the internet. So be sure to go check that out. I'll put the full link below. When he first walks up, it looks like a basic small 2-car garage. There's not many exposures. Now, there may be something that we can't see in the video, but from what we can tell, it doesn't look like there's anything that's in danger of catching fire. One thing that you do notice, though, is there are some low-hanging power lines. That's always a danger, something you should always be paying attention to. The other thing that you notice is that it is fenced in on both sides, one by a brick wall, one by this aluminum fence here. And then another danger that you don't see very often on many houses is you have this pool. Now, it's not the end of the world, but certainly that's not something you would want a firefighter falling into with his full gear and his pack on. Now, one thing I did want to make sure that I pointed out in this video was the structure itself. Now, when you first show up, you see it's a small structure and you know that there's an active fire burning inside. You also see that it's buttoned up pretty tight. That garage door's closed, that side door's closed. There's no other windows open. Now, I'm not saying that this garage was showing signs of a backdraft, but when you have a small space with an active fire that may have burned itself out with high heat, those are conditions that are ripe for a backdraft. Again, I know somebody's probably going to give me a hard time about that in the comments, but that's something you should be thinking about and get in the habit of doing regularly as a young firefighter. Which is the other thing that I wanted to point out, which I thought was great that they did. As they were cutting that garage door, they had a charged hand line ready to go. That's something you don't see nearly enough. I think that's a good thing to get in the practice of doing, assuming you have the manpower and the ability to have that there ready to go. Finally, the last thing that I wanted to point out is you see when they cut the garage door here, it looks like the back of a framed out wall. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier when I was saying what you see isn't always what you get. When you show up, you think you're showing up on a garage fire, and it turns out this might be a finished living space. When you show up on something like that, you need to begin asking yourself some questions like, is there a person in there? Are there animals in there? What other fuel or things are in there that could be harmful to us going forward? Two things. First, in the comments in the original video, a lot of people were giving the guy a hard time because he was having trouble getting that door open. I think he did the right thing by trying it first with the Halligan just to pop it that way. When it didn't work, just break the window. Think smarter, not harder. It's not really useful to go into calling someone out just because they struggle to get a door open. But if you're a new or young firefighter, just remember that. Think smarter, not harder. The second thing that I wanted to point out, and more importantly, is you just heard the guy say there's an attic within the attic. Now, I'm not sure exactly what he means by that, but again, this kind of goes back to what I talked about earlier at the beginning of this video. What you see isn't always necessarily what you get. They thought it was a garage. Turns out at least the bottom section of this is a finished living space. With this being a finished living space, my guess is that there is a ceiling and that there is more, at least maybe not livable, but at least some sort of finished space up above. Perhaps there's multiple compartments with walls separating it. Who knows? People do weird things with their house. Again, in the comments in the original video, people were giving them a very hard time about putting guys on the roof and cutting holes in the roof for a structure this small. I don't know if that was necessarily a bad move, and I'm fully in the camp of putting people on the roof as little as possible. It's still necessary, but do it as little as possible. But given that there might have been multiple finished compartments that were walled off from one another, this might have been the best way, the easiest way to get to the seat of the fire. The last thing I'll say about this clip is it looks like all of the fire is definitely in that attic space. In the front of the garage, you could see that they probably took out most of that front wall. You don't really see a lot of smoke billowing out of there, but also they took the window on this side door that's directly in front of us. You don't really see a lot of smoke coming out of there, no flames or anything like that. So all of the fire looks like it's primarily contained in that attic space. Finally, and this is the last thing I wanted to point out about this video, is I noticed in the comments in the original video, there were quite a few people making comments about the fact that there were so many firefighters on one small structure fire. And me personally, I think that's a really good thing. I think the fire service has been pushing for this for a long time, to have plenty of firefighters to safely operate at any structure fire. Now, I don't necessarily know if the people making those comments were firefighters or were not firefighters, but if you're completely unfamiliar with the fire service and how it works, when a call for a fire comes in, it usually comes in with a generic description, something along the lines of structure fire at 123 Main Street. In response to that, the fire department sends out a certain number of units, maybe 2 engines, 3 engines, it just depends on where you work. And when that happens, each of those units has a certain number of firefighters, so that they know on every structure fire, a certain number of individuals will be there to help fight the fire. Again, I think this is a really good thing, especially considering how many departments there are in the country that are very underfunded and are struggling to get personnel. And if you're a firefighter that works for a department that struggles for adequate manning, you should check out Active 911. It was created by a volunteer firefighter for first responders just like us. It's intuitive and easy to use, so even the saltiest, crustiest, oldest, back in my day firefighter can figure it out. With Active 911, the alerts come directly to your phone, so there's no need to carry around clunky pagers or radios, and the app comes with features like built-in navigation and messaging that allows you to set up trainings, store pre-plans, and more. Check out the Active 911 link in the description below and never miss a call again.